Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. Blood pounded in Dante Valerius's ears, louder than the rhythmic clacking of the high-speed rail tracks beneath his feet, a deafening drumbeat of fury and desperation. He was the Capo dei Capi, the demon of the Western Syndicate, a man whose whisper could level city blocks. Yet here he was, trapped in a first-class cabin of the Midnight Express, paralyzed by a sound smaller than a breath, but heavier than a death sentence. The wailing of a 3-month-old infant. The cry wasn't just noise, it was a beacon. Every jagged sob that tore from the tiny, swaddled bundle in his arms was a sonar ping alerting the assassins 3 cars back to his exact location. Dante looked down at his son, Elian. The boy's face was a twisted mask of red, tear-streaked misery, his tiny fists bunching against Dante's bespoke, charcoal gray suit. "Quiet, Elian," Dante hissed, his voice a low rumble that usually sent grown men to their knees. He rocked the child, his movements stiff, unpracticed. "For the love of God, quiet." The baby screamed louder. Dante's pheromones, a suffocating aura of burnt cedar and ozone, spiked in his panic. It was a novice mistake. In his attempt to assert dominance over the situation, he was flooding the cabin with aggressive alpha pressure. It was enough to make the beta passengers in the adjacent seats whimper and clutch their chests, but for a sensitive infant, it was terrifying. Why was the head of the Valerius family on a public train? It seemed insane. It was insane. But 3 hours ago, his private jet had been rigged with C4. 2 hours ago, his armored convoy was ambushed. There was a mole in the inner circle. The only way to get Elian to the sanctuary in the north was to disappear into the mundane, chaotic flow of civilian transit. A perfect plan until the hunger set in. Elian hadn't eaten in 6 hours. The formula prepared by the wet nurse, who was currently lying dead in a ditch 50 miles south, was gone. "Sir." A trembling beta conductor stepped toward the booth, sweat beading on his forehead. "The noise. Other passengers are complaining. Perhaps if you could step into the vestibule." Dante lifted his eyes. They were the color of shattered ice. "If you speak to me again," Dante said, his voice terrifyingly calm, "I will peel the skin from your face and use it to silence this cabin." The conductor turned pale, stumbled back, and fled. Elian shrieked, a high-pitched, jagged sound that grated against Dante's sanity. The door to the train car slid open. Dante's hand dropped to the SIG Sauer P320 concealed beneath his jacket. If it was the assassins, he would paint this luxury car red. But it wasn't an assassin. It was a young man. Slender, dressed in an oversized, cable-knit cream sweater that swallowed his frame and worn denim jeans. He had hair the color of honey and eyes that looked like melted gold, hidden behind thick-rimmed glasses. He held a book in one hand, his posture unassuming, almost invisible. He walked down the aisle, ignoring the heavy, crushing pressure of Dante's alpha aura. That was the first anomaly. Most Omegas would be on the floor, trembling in submission. This boy walked through the dense pheromones as if he were strolling through a spring breeze. He stopped at Dante's booth. Dante's grip on the gun tightened. "Keep walking." The boy ignored the threat. He looked not at Dante, but at the screaming bundle in his arms. He tilted his head, his nostrils flaring slightly. "He's hungry," the boy said. His voice was soft, like velvet dragged over gravel. "And he's terrified of you." Dante sneered. "I am his father." "You smell like a thunderstorm about to break," the boy countered, his gaze finally meeting Dante's. There was no fear there, only a deep, sorrowful exhaustion. "You're crushing him with your intent to kill. Give him to me. Touch him and you die." The boy sighed, a sound of immense patience. "If he keeps crying, the men in the black trench coats 3 cars back will find you. They are checking IDs. They will be here in 2 minutes." Dante froze. "Who are you?" "Someone who wants to sleep," the boy said. Without waiting for permission, he reached out. This was the unthinkable act. No one touched Dante Valerius. No one touched the air. To reach into the personal space of a rampant alpha was suicide. But the boy's hands were steady. He slid his fingers under the bundle. Dante should have snapped his wrist. He should have put a bullet between the boy's eyes. But as the stranger leaned in, a scent hit Dante. It was faint, incredibly subtle, masked by layers of suppressants, but it cut through the aggressive cedar like a knife. White tea and rain. Clean, purifying, absolute stillness. Dante's muscles unlocked. It was involuntary. The scent bypassed his logic and hit his hindbrain, whispering safe. Mate. Peace, In that second of biological betrayal, the boy took the baby. He sat down opposite Dante, cradling Elian with a fluidity that spoke of experience. He didn't rock the baby frantically. He just held him close, unbuttoned the top of his heavy sweater, and pressed the baby's ear against his chest, right over his heart. He began to hum, a low, resonant vibration that seemed to harmonize with the rattle of the train tracks. Shoo, the boy whispered, trailing a finger down Elian's cheek. The storm is outside, little one. Inside, we are quiet. The boy released his pheromones intentionally now. It wasn't the heavy, cloying sweetness typical of omegas in heat. It was a medicinal, cooling scent, rare and potent. It washed over the booth, neutralizing Dante's aggression, wrapping the baby in a sensory cocoon. Elian's cries sputtered, turned into hiccups, and then silence. The baby's eyes drooped. He rooted instinctively against the soft wool of the sweater, finding comfort in the stranger's heartbeat. Dante stared, his mouth slightly ajar. The silence in the cabin was deafening. What did you do? I neutralized your pressure, the boy said, not looking up. You're projecting fear. Babies are mirrors. He reflects you. I don't feel fear, Dante lied instantly. The boy looked up, his golden eyes sharp behind the glass lenses. Everyone feels fear. Only fools pretend they don't. Dante studied him. The boy was beautiful in a quiet, shattered sort of way. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his wrists, visible as the sweater rode up, were scarred. Old scars. Your name? Dante demanded. Julian. Julian. Dante tested the name. It tasted like salvation. You know about the men in the back. I saw them, Julian said. They move like soldiers, but look like thugs. And you? You look like a man running out of time. I am a man with resources, Dante corrected. If you help me keep him quiet until the next station, I will pay you. Whatever you want. Julian let out a dry, humorless laugh. Money. Is that how you solve everything? It usually works. Keep your money. Just don't let them kill me when the shooting starts. Dante leaned forward, the predator reawakening. There won't be a shooting. I will handle it. With a baby in your arms? You're arrogant. Julian adjusted Elian's blanket. Sit back. Act like a tired father. Stop radiating murder. For the first time in 10 years, Dante Valerius obeyed an order. He leaned back, crossing his arms, watching Julian. The door at the end of the car slid open. 3 men entered. They wore long coats, their hands buried deep in their pockets. Their eyes scanned the passengers, methodical, cold. They were looking for a high-profile target, likely expecting a retinue of guards. They weren't looking for a domestic scene. Dante tensed. Julian's scent flared slightly, a spike of rain, heavier now, masking Dante's scent completely. Julian leaned across the table, his hand brushing Dante's knee. The touch was electric. Smile, Julian whispered. You're talking to your husband about dinner. Dante forced the muscles of his face to relax. He looked at Julian, really looked at him, and for a moment, he didn't have to pretend. He saw the strength in the slope of Julian's neck, the fierce protection in the way he held a child that wasn't his. The assassins passed their booth. One paused, his gaze lingering on Dante. Honey, Julian said, his voice pitching up slightly, filled with a domestic annoyance that was terrifyingly convincing. I told you we should have flown. Elian is exhausted. Dante caught the cue. And I told you, the pressure hurts his ears. The assassin sneered at the domestic squabble and moved on, the heavy door sliding shut behind them. Dante exhaled, a breath he felt he had been holding for days. He looked at Julian. You are a good liar. I've had to be, Julian murmured. He looked down. Elian was asleep. You're not just a random passenger, Dante said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. You recognized the threat too quickly. You controlled your pheromones like a master. Who are you really, Julian? Julian hesitated. He pulled his hand back from Dante's knee, the loss of contact leaving a cold spot on Dante's leg. I was a nurse. In the chaotic wards. I learned to keep calm. Liar, Dante said softly. You have the hands of a musician, but the eyes of a soldier. And you have the suit of a CEO, but the eyes of a killer, Julian retorted. We all wear costumes. The train screeched, the brakes engaging violently. Both men grabbed the table. The lights flickered and died, plunging the cabin into twilight shadows. They pulled the emergency brake, Dante growled, drawing his weapon. They know I'm here. Not here, Julian corrected, clutching Elian. They know you're on the train. They're going to search car by car now. Dante stood up. Stay here. Under the table. No. Julian stood up too, clutching the baby. If you leave us, we're leverage. If you die, we die. We move together. Dante looked at him. This Omega, frail-looking and exhausted, was making demands in the face of death. And God help him, Dante burned with a sudden, possessive need to ensure this boy survived the night. Fine, Dante said. Stay behind me. If I say drop, you drop. If I say run, you run. Understood. They moved into the vestibule. The air was cold, smelling of steel and friction. Dante kicked open the side door of the train. The world outside was a blur of dark forest and snow. The train had stopped on a bridge, suspended over a frozen ravine. We have to jump, Dante said, looking at the snowbank below. It was a 15-foot drop. With the baby? Julian hissed. They will sweep the train with automatic fire in less than 60 seconds. It's the snow or the bullets. Gunfire erupted in the car they had just left. Screams echoed. Julian looked at the drop, then at Dante. Catch us. I swear it. Dante leaped first. He hit the snowbank, rolling with the impact, the cold biting through his suit. He scrambled to his feet, opening his arms. Now, jump. Julian didn't hesitate. He wrapped himself around the baby, turning his back to the ground, and fell. Dante caught them. The impact drove him into the snow, the breath leaving his lungs, but he held on. He absorbed the force, shielding Julian's body with his own. They tumbled down the slope, a tangle of limbs and snow, coming to a rest at the treeline. Silence returned to the forest, broken only by the distant shouting from the train bridge above. Dante lay on his back, panting. Julian was on top of him, shivering, checking the bundle between them. Elian, Dante asked, his voice hoarse. A small, disgruntled squeak came from the blankets. Alive. Unharmed. Julian slumped, his forehead resting against Dante's chest. He's okay. Dante reached up, his hand tangling in Julian's snow-dampened hair. The scent of white tea and rain was everywhere now, mixed with the metallic tang of adrenaline. It was intoxicating. You are insane, Dante whispered. I just did the unthinkable, Julian murmured, lifting his head. His glasses were gone, lost in the fall. His golden eyes were wide, pupils blown. I trusted Alpha. Dante's thumb brushed Julian's cheekbone. You didn't trust an alpha. You trusted your mate. The words hung in the frozen air. Julian froze. The denial rose to his lips, the biological impossibility, the absurdity of it, but his body betrayed him. His scent glands flared in response to Dante's proximity, a sweet, yielding answer to Dante's dominance. We need to move, Julian whispered, his voice trembling. They'll come down. Let them come, Dante snarled softly, his arm tightening around Julian's waist. I have my air. I have my Omega. I will burn this forest to the ground before I let them touch either of you. They found shelter in an abandoned game warden's cabin a mile into the woods. It was dusty, smelling of old pine and neglect, but it had a fireplace. Dante broke a chair to feed the hearth. The fire crackled to life, casting long, dancing shadows against the log walls. Julian sat on the moth-eaten rug, stripping Elian of his damp outer layers. Dante watched them from the doorway, his gun checking the perimeter. When he turned back, the sight hit him like a physical blow. Julian, shirtless to dry his clothes, holding Elian skin to skin. The firelight licked across Julian's pale back, illuminating a tapestry of scars. Lash marks. Cigarette burns. Dante's vision went red. He crossed the room in 2 strides, dropping to his knees behind Julian. His fingers hovered over the scars. Who? Dante's voice was a low growl, vibrating with a violence that made the windows rattle. Julian flinched, curling tighter around the baby. It doesn't matter. He's dead. You killed him. I survived him, Julian corrected. That's the best revenge. Dante's hand settled gently on Julian's shoulder. He didn't push. He didn't demand. He simply poured his own warmth into the boy. You are not just a survivor, Julian. You are a king in beggar's clothes. Julian turned, looking over his shoulder. The firelight caught the tears brimming in his eyes. And you? You're a monster in a silk suit. Yes, Dante admitted. But I'm your monster now. The shift was subtle. Julian leaned back, resting his weight against Dante's chest. It was a surrender. A quiet acceptance of the bond that had snapped into place on the train. The baby needs milk, Julian whispered. Real milk. I know, Dante said. My men are coming. The extraction team is 10 minutes out. They will bring everything. And then, Julian asked, you go back to your empire? And I go back to nowhere. Dante wrapped his arms around Julian and the baby, encasing them both. No, there is no nowhere anymore. You managed to silence the heir of the Valerius family when his own father couldn't. You jumped off a bridge for a child that isn't yours. Dante pressed a kiss to the sensitive skin behind Julian's ear, marking him. You are coming home. The position of nanny is taken, but the position of consort is vacant. Julian let out a shaky breath. I'm troubled, Dante. The people who gave me these scars, they are still looking. Good. Dante smiled against Julian's skin, a wicked, terrifying expression that promised ruin to his enemies. I was getting bored with peace. Let them come. I'll introduce them to the wolf. Julian chuckled, a soft, melodic sound. You're the wolf? I thought you were the demon. For you, Dante said, resting his chin on Julian's shoulder, watching his son sleep peacefully in Julian's arms. I will be whatever keeps the nightmares away. Outside, the roar of a helicopter cut through the silence of the night. The rescue team had arrived. The danger was far from over. The war for the underworld was just beginning. But as Dante helped Julian to his feet, draping his suit jacket over the Omega's shoulders, he knew the war was already won. He had the boy. He had the heir. And that is how the demon found his heart in the wreckage of the Midnight Express. If you enjoyed seeing Julian bring the mighty Dante to his knees with a single look, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, if you were Julian, would you run from the Mafia boss or run towards him? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,